outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and I am here with Jenny Koltnow, the Executive Director of the Campbell Foundation. Jenny, thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alan.
Oh, my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about the Campbell Foundation. I know that y'all are a charitable arm, if you will, of the famous Campbell Clinic. I'll go so far as to say the world famous Campbell Clinic. At least it's world famous in Memphis.
It is actually world famous.
Yeah. Tell us about the foundation and what y'all do.
Sure, be happy to. So the Campbell Foundation is the charitable arm, the education and charitable trust of the Campbell Clinic. And actually, this December marks our 75th anniversary. But for better or for worse, we fly a little bit under the radar because of the nature of our programs, and was really excited about this conversation because hopefully over the coming months and years, we're going to change that. And so that members of our greater Memphis community and beyond, particularly those who have sought out the Campbell Clinic services and care, are going to have just another reason to be proud and be comfortable coming to the Campbell Clinic for their treatment. So the Campbell Foundation exists really to support surgeon education, clinical research, and community outreach. And our programs have really been defined by a real commitment to orthopedic excellence that exists not only in the clinic and the OR, but also in the community, and really in offering continued innovation and insight to provide the best possible patient care. So we have a variety of programs, and one we're saying, world famous. It really is world famous because the Campbell Foundation is really the author of the Bible of Orthopedic Surgery, which is Campbell's Operative Orthopedics, a publication that is really seen as the preeminent textbook for orthopedic surgery. And we have users, physicians across the world who have been using this textbook in their programs and in their practice for nearly 80 years.
Well, that's pretty cool. I know that the Campbell Clinic, back in the day was, and I guess still is, but was really known as an innovator in orthopedic surgery and care. Can you talk a little bit about that, the history of the clinic itself?
Absolutely. So I think it really begins with what surgeon education entails. So the Campbell Clinic and the Campbell Foundation operate the oldest orthopedic surgery residency in the country. Actually, it was our founder, Willis C. Campbell, who created a residency nearly 100 years ago. And over time, we've been training hundreds and hundreds of orthopedic surgeons just immediately in our program. A number of years ago, added a fellowship program, which is kind of like a 6-year residency. But now we have 40 residents. Each resident is part of an 8-person cohort, and they go through training for 5 years. And believe me that because we are a private practice, we have the partnerships with all of the healthcare systems in our community. These residents, these men and women, are getting really in-depth, comprehensive training so they can go on and be phenomenal surgeons, but also phenomenal leaders in healthcare. Our fellowship program currently consists of 6 fellows. And these programs really enable us to provide great care and, a sort of a talent pool for our own clinic, but also in distributing that talent across the field. The second part of our work on the education side is really our publications and editorial function. So we are preparing and distributing hundreds of different manuscripts and so forth. And that is really so that we are informing the field, but that rigor and that engagement, I think from my perspective, when you always have peers around you and alumni and mentors, and then you also have people behind you asking questions. I think it all lends itself to creating a really dynamic environment. And this is why our surgeons really can stay on the cutting edge and provide the level of care that all of us hope to have for ourselves and for our families.
Well, let me pick up on something you said at the beginning.
Okay.
Did I understand you correctly to say that Dr. Campbell kind of pioneered the use of residency programs?
He did.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that is, you can't think about being a physician of any kind without doing a residency. And,
right.
And that concept started here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Exactly. For orthopedic surgery, it did. So, and really, I mean, this was, in fact, that program got off the ground in 1924. So you can imagine what healthcare looked like during that era. And it really set a stage, obviously, for continuing education and training and sharing information. But I also think Dr. Campbell had so many firsts, and his partners and many of the people behind him had so many firsts, that there is a spirit of, let's go there, let's chart a new path. And so we see that with the development of even the American Association of Orthopedic Surgeons, which was created by Dr. Campbell. Now it's a massive international network of orthopedic surgeons and allied health professionals from all over the world.
How does the foundation support that drive for innovation?
Yeah, so it really breaks down into our three pillars. The first one, as I explained, is really around surgeon education, and it's both those who are in training, but it's also those who are in the field who want to continue to stay apprised of the techniques and treatments so that they can provide great care. The second part is our clinical research program, and we've had research as part of our operation for a long time, but that research is administered by the Campbell Foundation, where we have a team that supports our physicians as project investigators, but we work with other local healthcare partners, we work with centers across the country, and we even support clinical trials that are investigating any number of different ways, really to have the best outcomes for patients. And then the third part is community healthcare, and this is really a critical piece of who we are and the culture that we have across the Campbell family. That number one, we put a priority on access, and that everyone deserves access to excellent orthopedic care, but it also is a matter of being in the right place at the right time. And so for more than 40 years, we've been providing care at Regional 1, or AKA the Med, even when the trauma program was just getting off the ground in the late 70s, early 80s. And then we work closely with Le Bonheur and lots of other community agencies to really address those needs so that there's no barriers to care.
What kind of, are there any kind of research fruits, if you will, that the foundation is responsible for, that some of our listeners might be familiar with, or is it?
Oh, yeah.
Is it really inside baseball kind of?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Because there is a lot of research out there where, like, us lay people are like, so what difference is that going to make? Am I going to feel better?
That's right. Yeah, you read that and you say, well, yeah, of course, that would be the way I would do it.
Right.
But what would be some things that someone not deeply immersed in orthopedic surgery might be aware of?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's a lot of different things that are ongoing. For example, one of the more recent studies was around opiate-sparing therapies after shoulder surgery. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that we have an opioid crisis in our community, in our country. But we are really looking at alternative ways to address pain, but also ease recovery for patients who oftentimes, shoulder surgery is very complex and, requires a considerable amount of time for full recovery and return to mobility. And there has been an extensive study done to really look at how can we reduce the need or eliminate the need for any opiates for pain management. And it's a combination of other anti-inflammatories, it's physical therapy, it's cryotherapy, and just really that preparation prior to surgery, as well as the follow-up with the full team, surgeon, allied health professionals, physical therapists, and we have seen a remarkable drop in the amount of the opiate pain medication, but also phenomenal feedback from patients saying, I don't feel pain, I feel better, and then eliminating a lot of the other side effects. So, a lot of people come to us, they're injured or they've been in pain for an extensive period of time. You don't come to the orthopedist for fun. You do it because you need something fixed and you're hurting, and it's putting a real, challenging what you do every day. And I think our responsibility is to find ways that we can expedite recovery, but also make sure that you're still able to have the best quality of life. And some of these studies that we've done have lent themselves to exactly those things.
Very cool. Very, very topical, because as you say, so many folks have terrible stories of, child or a relative or a friend who was injured and then became addicted to opioids as a result of their recovery. So I'm glad to hear y'all are exploring alternative.
And the faster, the faster you're off of those medications, the less likely there is to have any long-term residual consequences. So,
very good.
Another thing, in my former life, I was at AutoZone, and that role I was in corporate communications. And I remember meeting a new vice president of human resources who was intent on really educating our AutoZone employees about their benefits and ways to save money on their healthcare. And this is back 7-8 years ago. But, the idea of outpatient surgery was, at least in my little brain, was absurd. How could I go have surgery and not go to a hospital? Well, fast forward, and I think that Campbell Clinic has played a key role, and the Campbell Foundation, in really ascertaining the level of care in an ambulatory surgery center or an outpatient center like the one that we have here in Germantown. And, the patient experience is phenomenal. Being able to immediately go into physical therapy after your surgery is, second to none. And just the fact that you can come in at 7 a.m. and you're home at 4 p.m., I think helps everybody really adjust and then begin the rehabilitation process that much more quickly, never mind the cost savings. So I think that that's like another area where it's more on the practical side, but the spirit of being an advocate for our patients, we do want to offer that alternative as long as it's safe for the patients having their surgery.
Let me take a little bit of a turn here, and
Sure.
You mentioned your career at AutoZone, and want to ask you, Jenny, a little bit about your background. Are you a Memphis girl? Did you grow up in Memphis?
I am not. I like to say I'm an adopted daughter of Memphis, but I have roots in Wisconsin. I'm a cheesehead. Grew up in Wisconsin, left for Tennessee when I was 18 to go to college, and I've been in Tennessee now for almost 30 years. Oh my gosh.
Well, once you get used to living in Tennessee, you can't live anywhere else.
I know.
Particularly Memphis. So which fine educational institution did you matriculate to in when you left Wisconsin?
Tennessee. So I went to Vanderbilt. I earned my bachelor's there in human and organizational development and English. I came out of college ready to do anything or nothing, but went to graduate school and got my master's in higher education administration. And I really thought that I would go on to be a dean of students or a vice president of student affairs. I loved university life, loved the culture, was really active when I was an undergrad. And long story short, I moved to Memphis to work at the University of Memphis. Go Tigers. But I think I quickly realized that my nature is to be out in the community and connecting with people. And so I stayed there for about a year, took about 8 months away from Memphis, came back. See, this is that, boomerang effect of when you find a community and find a person you love, you just want to get back in Memphis. And so moved back, and about 4 months later had this remarkable opportunity turn up with the Memphis Grizzlies, who are brand new to Memphis. And then we went from there.
Well, very good. Well, did you do your master's work at Vanderbilt as well?
I did. Yep.
All right. I should say I have a very warm spot in my heart for Vanderbilt. My wife went to Vanderbilt.
Oh, wow.
She is much smarter than I am. But she was a history major, and so therefore was compelled to go to law school. No, she always wanted to be a lawyer. She had an uncle who was a lawyer in Georgia, and she always looked up to him and wanted to be a lawyer. And so went to Vanderbilt and loved it. It's I spent a lot of time up there because we dated through college, and it's a great school, notwithstanding the fact that it's in the evil Nashville, Tennessee area.
It's I really feel fortunate to have been there when I was, when there was a certain simplicity and humility about Nashville in the 90s.
Right.
Because it is absolutely transformed from my time there. It's awesome visiting the campus. It's just exploding with like new offers and so forth. But there was a, ease of moving around and kind of a novelty of being in Nashville at that time. Because it was kind of an
Carmichael Towers.
Yeah, I did for 2 years.
I think they're gone. I think all of them are gone.
They're gone. They tore them down. I mean, yes.
Oh, Allison lived in Carmichael 2 out of her 4 years there. And my claim to fame is I rode in the elevator with Will Perdue, who at the time was the starting center for the basketball team. And he was not interested in anything I had to say to him. So, but he's got world championship rings and I don't. So, go figure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Win some, you lose some. Right.
So what was your role at the Grizzlies?
So I joined the Grizzlies literally as they were just moving into the community. And at the time, I was the coordinator of community investment. So if you can recall what life was like in Memphis in 2001, moving this team, which had so little runway to relocate, over national borders and get set up. And then you throw September 11th right in the midst of it before opening week began. We scrambled to just connect with fans, educate people about NBA basketball, familiarize them with our roster. And I mean, everywhere, anywhere someone was willing to let one of us speak or hand out player cards or take the mascot. That is really how we defined the first year. It was just mad scramble. By the second and third season, we started to actually create some meaningful programs. There's a big emphasis on literacy and wellness and youth sports at the time. But it's really fun. I could talk all day about just how the NBA has evolved as a catalyst for social engagement over the last 20 years, but how I really believe that teams like the Memphis Grizzlies have inspired the depth of work that teams now do in their communities.
Well, very good. Yeah, the Grizzlies are a great asset to the community, and I don't know how other NBA teams are, but they really do put their money where their mouth is and go above and beyond what they have to do just for promotional purposes. They really are invested in the city, and that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Now, who was the most marketable player? Remind me, who was the most marketable player that first year?
In the first year, I mean, you probably remember it was the Shane Battier, Pau Gasol kind of superhero thing, but understand too that we had Jason Williams on our team, and, he was a bit of a, let's say, just unpredictable, but I will tell you, and I do have to share this story because this really changed my opinion about Jason. our first weekend of the season, we had this thing called open practice. And this was the first time fans could actually meet the players in person. We had tables around the concourse at the pyramid. And when the fans would come in, they'd get a colored ticket. And that's the tables that they could go to get autographs or pictures. And long story short, I had a fan who insisted on meeting Jason. And I mean, the rules were the rules. We had long lines, but he insisted he wanted to meet him. And it was Jason who actually stood up and spoke up for me to basically assure him, like, look, she's just doing her job. I mean, really explained, and then kind of cut out a line and just said, now, I really hope you come back to support our team. And so here I'm just this young green, I've never been around, NBA players before. And it was Jason who kind of stepped in to not only defend me, but also to appease that fan. And I think that kind of energy and that responsibility to connect with fans is something that really started very early on with those initial players and has really defined the team as a really strong, sincere corporate citizen.
And that story is a little off brand for Jason.
Exactly why that's why I tell it.
I'm glad you shared that because sometimes our folks like that have this public persona, and you wouldn't expect him to be. That showed a lot of empathy, both for you and the fan. And that's not like I say, that's kind of off brand for him. So I'm glad to hear he's really a good guy.
So we have great stories of all the guys, but I do believe that the culture around giving back is something that has really been fostered. It's been very thoughtful. Not all years are the same, but that's been there. And I think that's been something too embraced by the management, by the ownership, especially, and then even like the coaching staff. So, there are more teams that have gotten on board with philanthropy and outreach programs and since 2001. But I really think that the Grizzlies were a pioneer in that.
So you talked about AutoZone. Yes. Were you involved in community, and you said corporate communication? That was kind of internal communication?
Yeah, so I was the director of communications and community relations at AutoZone after I left the Grizzlies. And so I managed all of our corporate philanthropy programs and then our internal communications and public relations for the company. So it was a huge, deviation from what I was doing before. But I think that perspective that I had from kind of a startup with the Grizzlies was incredibly helpful. And then by then I had a really strong national network. So, I really could tap into a lot of other resources to develop programs that were going to be meaningful for our company, but also ways for our employees to get engaged.
There's a great business book called Cumulative Advantage that talks a little bit about that. In particular, the concept that, and we talked a little bit about this off air, so often you see people when they're successful and you think, that person just spawned from the ground, came out of Vanderbilt with all of these great abilities, and you had talent, but it's those experiences that build on each other. And the book talks about how some people have an advantage starting out, where they were born, who their parents are, all of those sorts of things. But even if you don't start out with that, you can use whatever advantages you have and start multiplying on that if you're intentional about it.
Yes.
And so when did you know, or do you still know, that this kind of community engagement is what you wanted to make your life's work about? Because that seems to be what you're all about.
Yeah, that's spot on. I really saw an opportunity with community relations, probably going back to when I was with the University of Memphis. But I had no idea how to get into it. And, there are so many jobs I pursued at that point in my career that went nowhere because I just didn't have the background. And I certainly did not have the connections. There's any sort of one thing that I can use to describe myself. a dot connector. And so there's a lot of things that I do and I've done in my day-to-day jobs where I have no experience. But I've been pretty resourceful about finding the people who do have experience. In fact, I have a meeting with some folks later today on a project that, I mean, I couldn't be less prepared to lead it, but I know really smart people who've done things like this a million times, and they can be part of my ad hoc committee to make sure that we really deliver a great a great product at the end of our term. So I just love this community. I feel like I've gotten so much from the people here. I've been so blessed. I've had amazing mentors and experiences, things that I didn't even know existed. And I think that's what's exciting about the role I have now with the Campbell Clinic Foundation, is that I can really pool all those different experiences. And if anything, I just have to stop myself from saying, when I was at AutoZone, when I was at the Grizzlies, because I'll make my team insane. But it really is, I wrote that down. I really do think it's a cumulative advantage, because very little in my formal training prepared me for this, but I've just been blessed to be in places where I can constantly learn and constantly grow and build support teams so that we keep doing good work.
Well, you mentioned mentors before. Who are some of the people that, looking back on it, really were game changers for you in terms of steering your life or giving you those tools that you're using now?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that are familiar to your audience. I do have to say that I have a great relationship with my parents, and they have supported me every step of the way, and always been a sounding board, and have been so humble, and reminded me to, stay humble through, any opportunity or any decision I've made. That first year at the Grizzlies, there was a point when we were trying to get some programs together, and I had an opportunity to create an event for the Grizzlies to give away a substantial amount of grant funding to local nonprofits. And a couple of my colleagues kind of passed on the project. So I was like, well, I'll do it. So we hosted an event. It was really kind of the beginning of our Grizzlies philanthropic endeavors, and it went really well. And among the people in the audience was Gail Rose. And at the time, she was a consultant for the Grizzlies. And I didn't know her at the time, but I think she was just quietly observing everybody. And not long later, I was promoted, but that's when I really started to facilitate our charitable giving programs. And little did I know at the time just how philanthropic and visionary the local ownership of the Grizzlies was, and how they've continued to be so deeply invested in this community. So I got to be part of that starting really in 2002. And so to have the opportunities to work with the locals like Andy and Staley Cates and Pitt Hyde and Charles Ewing and Fred Jones and people that, and then of course, Gail and Marty Regan, all those people I think really had a profound impact on me, and made me realize that this community is as strong and vibrant as it is because there's just a lot of people who are quietly giving, but also giving a lot of reputational energy and vision so that our city can continue to grow and thrive.
Yeah, I agree with you that that's one aspect of Memphis that maybe isn't well known, or because none of those people you described really that you named really blow their own horn when it comes to the great things that they do. And when you start naming names, that's always dangerous, because I always inevitably leave somebody out of that. But we've got a lot of great folks in Memphis that in their own way are putting money back into the community, and more important, putting themselves back into the community.
Yes. And I think it's just also like a lot of folks that I've met over the years, the financial investment is so important, but it's also the intellectual commitment that they've made to kind of see, okay, this is what's happening over here, going on over there. And so the same level of brilliance that they're bringing to the business world, they're actually able to deliver into our community. And, when we look at just dozens and dozens of examples, from education to the arts to even like recreational activity. All those things really took a lot of vision, first and foremost, to get it to where it is today.
Yeah. And, kind of going back to the start of our conversation, Dr. Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
It occurs to me that a guy like that could decide, I'm going to be a great surgeon. I'm going to be a great physician, and put all of their time and energy into that. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But a visionary, an innovator, a leader like Dr. Campbell decides, I want to be more than that. I want to build something that can be innovative, that can help other people, that can bring up other physicians and surgeons. And when you really think about the effect that one man had on healthcare,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
so much more beyond himself, not because he was so great, but because he enabled so many other people to be great.
Yes.
And Memphis is, I think, has more than its share of those kind of folks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are the determination Dr. Campbell had to bring care to individuals that were, far, far from any kind of medical provider at the time. There are stories of how he would jump on a train with his medical bag, go into rural Mississippi and take care of disabled children. And he was one of the founders of what was then called the Crippled Adult Hospital and the Crippled Children's Hospital. And, that commitment, knowing that, and obviously you had pretty rudimentary tools at the time, but it's part of why today we have a partnership with Le Bonheur to run a Center of Excellence for Cerebral Palsy Care and Research. And that was really an outcome of a seed gift from the Children's Foundation of Memphis. But, our organizations had 100-year history, first starting with the founders of that group back 100 years ago, and then now creating a really comprehensive one-stop shop for patients with CP and their families.
Wow.
So that I like to think that endurance, that we're not doing this just for the next few years, we're doing this for, many generations, many lifetimes, I think is true when we carry it through the Campbell family story as well.
Well, what's in the future for the Campbell Foundation?
Oh, there's so much. So immediately, actually next Tuesday, the Campbell Foundation is hosting an event with the Memphis Union Mission. And this is an annual event. It's been taking place now for 15 years. It's called Our Hearts, Their Souls, but it's a program that is facilitated by our foot and ankle specialists. We do a morning program where we're doing checkups. We're talking to the clients at Memphis Union Mission about their foot and ankle needs, their mobility. And then we're also providing shoes for all of the folks that are there that day. And it's an opportunity for us to really reach out to a lot of people in great need, but also create some of those pathways to care. We just actually completed our annual Footprints in Motion fundraising gala. It was online this year, but that program really drives our local community outreach, as well as an international elective where we send residents to do medical missions in developing countries. And then this December, as I mentioned, we'll mark our 75th anniversary. So we've recently gone through a rebranding, really trying to connect the Campbell Foundation with the Campbell Clinic. And then going into 2022, in conjunction with the anniversary, we'll really be enhancing our alumni outreach as well as our local outreach to deepen our ties to the local community and then further familiarize patients and families with the services that are available through our network. So
what do you think from your vantage point, look into your crystal ball, where do you see orthopedic medicine going?
So I'm probably one of the least qualified people to answer that question.
Yeah, but you hear things.
Yeah, I mean,
what are you hearing?
I think it's, if anything, with the demographic changes in our country, with Americans getting older, with the baby boomer generation, I mean, the demand for orthopedic care is just growing. And in so doing, not only do we have to always create, new ways to care for as many people as possible, but also to really continue to strengthen our teams, right? I mean, just like no one becomes successful on their own, no doctor is single-handedly gonna solve the problem. So those connections, we have a tremendous team of advanced practice providers, nurse practitioners, and PAs. We have great partnerships with the other healthcare organizations. And if anything, I think it's just, how can we care for more people? Because we know the downstream impact of people living with ongoing pain or discomfort, or not getting care immediately after an incident, and then the ramifications of that. So I think access, and I also think that, I'd like to put a greater emphasis on how we can educate the community about bone health. In our area, we think a lot about diabetes and hypertension, but the truth is that a lot of people out there, not just older folks, but really at all ages, have weak bones, and that's going to set them up for troubles down the road unless they start really better understanding what they need to do to keep themselves healthy.
Is that a function of diet or exercise? I guess everything is a function of diet and exercise. What one tip can you give everybody that they should start doing today to help their bone health?
Lay off the soft drinks.
Lay off the soft drinks.
Lay off the soft drinks. I mean, it's really one of those things. I mean, the sugar and the other elements that are in there. Now, this is Jenny Koltnow, who does not have any medical degree or healthcare degree of any sort. But honestly, I think that a lot of, just even as a parent, there's indications that kids' bone health is not as strong as it was a generation ago, because they're drinking Gatorades and Cokes and other things in lieu of milk. And so, really getting that calcium is so important. And then also just physical activity. So these are not things that are changing your lifestyle so much, but they do set you up for a longer term success. And then also, if you do have an accident, if you do fall off a bike, if you do have a sports injury, you're going to heal better if your bones are strong.
Yeah, there's probably more information than anybody wants about my family, but none of my children drink soft drinks. I have no idea why that is the case.
That's great.
Because I drank Diet Cokes kind of famously in college. I didn't drink alcohol, but I drank Diet Cokes. And my middle son, Charlie, loves, as he puts it, the leche. He took Spanish, and I think the only word he remembers is leche. But my wife always has, when he comes to the house for a holiday, she has to add an extra 2 gallons of milk. So I'm glad to hear he is on the right path for bone health.
Absolutely. And I think it's men and women. I mean, this is not just an issue for women. I mean, it really is all people, and it starts young. So, even for those who have children who are, once you get past like 5 or 6 and they're starting to make choices of their own, making sure that kids get adequate calcium, but then also just more, in general, just better nutrition. It just like it affects their blood and their weight and all the other things, it does absolutely affect their bone health.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
but more on that. And I think that's why, that outreach, even to our sports outreach and through schools and so forth, that we can be a player in keeping people informed, but also knowing where they can find trusted information.
Well, when you talk about bone health, the first thought I think of is osteoporosis, but that's not really what you're talking about. You're talking about the fact that, to put it colloquially, we don't.
The extreme.
We don't
So
really-
there's a lot of stages before you get to osteoporosis.
Yeah.
But some of them are, it can be reversible. So, it's really, you don't want that to be the one thing you're preventing. It's kind of like, do we wait until, our cholesterol is at XYZ, but it's all about making sure that you're taking those sort of preventative steps.
Right. And really looking at what you eat and what your lifestyle is and what our modern culture has done to us from a health standpoint in terms of, if you're really not careful, I mean, you can eat like a teenager well into your 50s. I know I have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, it's a good word to the wise.
Yes.
Nobody wants good advice because they think it's painful, but you drink more milk. I don't own any stock in the milk company, so full transparency. Well, Jenny, I sure have appreciated and enjoyed our conversation. I think it's
likewise.
I think it's been great for everybody to hear more about the Campbell Foundation. I'm so glad that Memphis nabbed you away from Nashville and Wisconsin. Although I've been to Wisconsin many times, it's a gorgeous place, particularly in the summer and this time of year with the leaves and the cooler temperatures and everything. But the nice thing about Memphis is it has an international airport and you can go back there whenever you want, just long as you come back.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure. And look, Alan, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Campbell Clinic Foundation. We hope that with conversations like this, and, even if a couple listeners tell a few other people they know, that helps us to really, begin to broaden others' understanding of who we are and where we've come from as a Campbell family. Absolutely.
I want to thank Jenny again for appearing on the show, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this program, and of course, why wouldn't you? It was great. Email it to other folks, share us on social media. Let's get the word out about the Campbell Foundation and all they're doing to make Memphis and the world a better place. And Jenny is going to go and make people's lives better, and I'm going to go get some justice. So again, I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm. Until the next time, I'll see you around. And again, Jenny, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.